All right, good morning everyone. Welcome to day 2 of IEEE LCN 2025. As you all know, we have something to celebrate, and that is 50 years of computer networking, 50 years of IEEE LCN, which is a remarkable achievement and a milestone for all of us. So yeah, it's only appropriate to celebrate that and celebrate it with all of you as you are here. And therefore we have prepared a little special program and some special activities for this purpose. And this is what we are talking about today. All right, so when preparing for LCN, I was at some point very surprised to see this in my inbox. I have received a message from Bob Metcalfe. He is the grandfather of Ethernet, and he congratulates all of us for this remarkable achievement of 50 years. And a little complaint in his usual behavior that, well, he prefers LCN over the term LAN. Local area network is not really capturing it according to him. Precise term would be LCN, in fact, so a local computer network. It is what it is, and the story goes that it is called LAN nowadays only because it's pronounceable, and that was the major selling point for calling it this way, and he still grunges about that. If you want to read the entire story, I have it as part of the proceedings for you. So there's the entire message from Bob Metcalfe for you to check out. All right. He was referring to this paper. This was co-authored by him. Ethernet distributed packet switching for local computer networks. This is one of the famous pictures with this famous drawing as well, where you have your Ethernet cables and then, or segments, how they are called, with these tabs that you can connect to and then span your local area network or local computer network. So this is where the name comes from. This was in 1976, so this was published in 1976 to give you a little of context. And this is exactly the date when LCN was founded. So this is the time, the spirit during which LCN was founded. And in 1976, this was LCN's program, looking very much different than today's program, I guess. 50 years later, really written on a typewriter and fairly small compared to our program now, but still observations on local networking. And yeah, that's quite interesting to see some history. And now we are here 50 years later. In order to celebrate this, we prepared a little bit for you. We have a little poster exhibition which you can see behind me, which you are also happy to inspect and check out during our breaks and so on. So have a look where we have been, how the proceedings, the cover pages of the proceedings changed over the years and so on, to get an impression of how LCN also evolved over time. What we also can offer is video messages from past LCN chairs, which you can check out on our YouTube channel, but also we will play back them later in the coffee break here in this room, so you can also watch these different messages of the past general chairs and program chairs that have contributed to that, and some even are here. So yeah. Have a look. It's worth watching listening to these anecdotes and to their reflections, and congratulations to this milestone. All right, and with that, I will hand over to our steering committee chair, Burkhard. The stage is yours.
All right, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I'm honored to be able to address a few words to you this morning. Especially delighted to a 50th anniversary because that is, for a computer conference, a very, very long time. But it's all about you, because without the authors in that room in the past 49 years, we wouldn't be here. That's the key. And we did see some of those activities going along. And the typewriter style was the major way of communicating. Although the paper on the LCN, on the local computer network, on LAN Ethernet, was different because it was Xerox PARC. They had people to typeset back home in their offices. Others handed in typewriter-based communications, and pictures were drawn by pens and rulers. And that's why the first couple, I think 4 or 5 proceedings, mainly looked like the second slide as shown by Florian. Until 1993, if I'm not mistaken, you really had to hand in CRCs, camera-ready copies, which meant you were delivered back home as the author in US letter short plus 2 inches on top on both sides, and had to pop and paste into the printout of what you wanted to see being printed. That was a very special time. I really had to do that on my very first LCN myself, and that took a little while to get it really done. In 1976, A.B. Frank was the TPC chair at that point, and he was backed by Peter C. Patton as the general chair. And these were the only 2 OC positions. Done deal. It has changed over time very clearly. And just to mention a few names of that time frame, Harvey Freeman became in 1983 a leading person in the LCN setting. He was backed by Michael McKee and Howard Solwin, and they were acting in multiple roles over the times and over the years. And then in 1988, Gary Kessler has joined, initially in 1992 with former roles, and he is still our webmaster today. And Joe Bumlis joined in 1994, who was reviving the TCCC activity. I will come back to that. Overall, LCN was hosted, as shown right here, really as suggested. Take a look at that. Thanks to Rowdy for making those 3 posters available and accessible in Minneapolis, one of the Twin Cities in the US, Minnesota. A little bit cold, especially end of October, early November. Nevertheless, we did see lots of people up there, but in the time frame of 1997, there were some difficulties in terms of attendees popping up. And the industrial support at that time faded because everybody assumed local air networks worked. The others was working. What was the problem? LCN couldn't contribute, quote unquote, question mark. Well, the 1991 issue of the internet crash due to congestion and flow control measures was settled already again. TCP was extended, IP was working still well, as it still does its job today, although IPv6 is waiting next 5 years. So we might see that happening eventually. That sort of topic list was not really easily maintained anymore. And so a bunch of youngsters, forgive me my English in that moment, took over, especially Frank Hübner, who became one of the LCN longest standing finance chairs. Ken Christensen, who supported then LCN by hosting it in Tampa for a couple of years and Clearwater Beach later on. We did see Peter Martini picking up on helping out, and he became the first non-US based but European based LCN host in Bonn Königswinter. And Tim took over. Tim Strayer is here in terms of TPC co-chair, chair, and general chair. Myself did the same stuff. Gary Kessler, as I mentioned, is still, I think, in that sense, the longest standing OC member over time. Well, at the time when he started, the web wasn't invented yet, which is a special viewpoint. And important to mention Joe Bumlis, because he was really pushing things forward in the context of TCCC, because that is our TC, as mentioned yesterday by Andreas Reinhardt. Without IEEE Computer Society's TCs, we wouldn't be here as well, because we need somebody who's backing us with infrastructure in the back end with support and even financial guarantees to a certain extent. And the starting point was really important. Leo Kreinrock was in there as well, and they participated in lots of different LCNs over the years. And probably some of you do not know that, but the IEEE 802 standard series, which is very well known, obviously, because it has been extended to all sorts of different technologies besides Ethernet, was in that context of LCN being used, because most of the people or standards organizations attended LCN at the beginning. The TCC was supporting those ones, and then the TCC sort of faded out a little bit and came back. We did have lots of people on the electrical engineering side and math in the initial days, because you know computer science was only quote-unquote invented in the early 1970s as a teaching subject or as a program for students to be able to learn about that. And they couldn't run the conference because they were just students at the age of 20, 25, whatever. And so that was really an issue to look into. And as mentioned, in the 90s, the peak rate of attendance was roughly at 300, 400, sometimes even 500, although those numbers are not confirmed. We talked to a couple people, but it's sometimes difficult. How many people in the room? Take a guess. At the moment, it's 85. I quickly counted beforehand. But in the past, the rooms were larger, and if people didn't count, it's very hard to estimate crowds of people. That's why the numbers are not confirmed, but they were roughly in the range of a couple hundreds. And then we basically needed to move on, and those youngsters I referred to helped to make the LCN survive. 2 years in Laurel, where Tim was really pushing forward as a local host. We had only 80 attendees in one of those events. And then the move from still a little bit colder northern northeast US to warm, nice weather like Florida, especially Tampa, was the saver, because people just enjoyed the time of leaving places in the world which are cold. So location matters. Location are important, although it's sometimes not the purpose to come to a certain location, but we all know we still have a body which needs to feel well, otherwise the brain wouldn't function perfectly well as well. What is about the sort of future? Well, we do know predictions are hard, and especially about the future. I think Niels Bohr was supposed to have said that statement 100 years ago. We did see lots of content already, and I did forget my crystal balls in the Swiss mountain range. But it's hard to predict, although we do see AI, Gen AI controls, AI actors since a couple days out there. Hollywood was sort of screaming loud at that point in time, complemented with the widest possible range of all our security topics, which I think will accompany us for the next 2-3 decades, because security topics and data protection, especially in a fully decentralized and distributed system, are key, combined with our large flower and zoo of different regulations around the world, because every region has its own or their own setting of making things work or not making things work. And all our network systems components are key, and they need to work now and in the future. In that sense, all our quantum X in terms of computing, cryptography, algorithms, whatever, will take over many of our steps, although we know it's hard to predict when that will happen. The number of qubits operationally useful, 126, 129, maybe 200 shortly, all fine, but we don't carry the quantum computer in our pocket yet. So, on the other hand, we don't need that device for all communication and computing purposes either. So we'll see how that moves along. And we see lots of sorts of self-optimization aspects of networking coming along. Immersive and multi-sensorial communication, 6G, we just talked yesterday, people already talk about 7G, whatever that might be. Well, it's a 7 instead of 6, sure, yes. Sustainability aspects pop up. And we basically see low and no code software development just as a sort of handover to our Computer Society president, because he's a software engineer and expert on that. We do programming, and if we have no code programming, what does that mean eventually for things we do and we just implemented prototype? So next LCN events, we'll see those emerging topics popping up. We always adapt to topics list year by year. We do see new people joining, and that's important. Beyond that, your authorships of today and all of those of the past 49 years are key, as I mentioned initially. Thank you very much for those activities you have done. Thank you to my fellow LCN Steering Committee members Without those, I wouldn't be standing right up here because it's a privilege to be the very first steering committee chair. Everything happened for the years 1 to 42, I think, without a chair, which was even better than that, but they sort of decided to find somebody who was speaking formally in case of needs. Thank you to all the current OC members, obviously, and those ones of the past. Wishing all of you a good decision on what to do. And our role model yesterday of Grenville was showing that you can take a very interesting career being part of an event and eventually moving to industry, eventually staying inside academia, eventually doing a service-oriented activity. And that's important if you collect expertise in those settings. Thank you very much to all the volunteers, which are never listed on any OC list or SC list, whatever, but these are the people inside this room, outside at the registration desk for ages and years. They help. And this list would definitely not be complete if I would not be able to thank TCCC, as I mentioned beforehand, because they help us keeping up. Thank you very much. Enjoy the conference and see you around.
All right, moving on. Thank you, Burkhard. Next up, it is my great pleasure to introduce our honorary speaker, Hironori Washizaki, the 2025 president of the IEEE Computer Society. Hironori is professor and associate dean at the Waseda University, Japan, and a recognized leader on the intersection of academia, industry, and also international standardization. His work has shaped software engineering worldwide, and with that, please join me in welcoming Hironori.
Hi, okay, good morning everyone. Thank you Florian for introducing me. So I'm Hironori Washizaki, please call me Hiro, and I'm really honored to be here as you know, this year I'm honored to lead the entire IEEE Computer Society. That is the world's largest computing organization because of you. And so we are very proud of, hosting, sponsoring, this conference, 50th, year. So I'm very honored to join this, huge, celebration, huge milestone of, 50th anniversary of IEEE Conference on Local Computer Networks, LCN. So congratulations. And so, I'd like to extend my gratitude to all, organizers, chairs, and all attendees. And because of you, this conference, this community is truly, important, important community. So as Florian already introduced, history, right? So 50 years ago, the concept of connecting computers in local networks was still emerging, right? And we saw the, for example, keynote was the observation of local internet, and so wow. So at that time, local means local area network, if I understand correctly. And then over the decades, yes, we know that this community, LCN has consistently showcased cutting edge research from early RAN architectures and protocols to the state, and also the rise of wireless networks and IoT software-defined networks, and now the integration of AI and software and networks. And for example, yesterday, we saw many really nice research and practice in the area of AI and networks, such as AI for network, but also network for AI. And by repeating the cycle of successful cycle of research, practice, standards, yes, indeed, as Florian and also Burkhard mentioned that standards is truly important. IEEE and IEEE Computer Society have developed a lot of standards, including computer networking standard, and then the area has been expanded, right? Not only computer communication, but also distributed systems and middleware, embedded systems, IoT edge and cloud, and also software-defined network and software engineering. Yes, I'm originally from software engineering, so I have been reading the evolution of software engineering body of knowledge, for example, and so we are handling for example, as Florian and also Burkhard mentioned, for example, what about no code and low code for networking, but also domain-specific language for networking tasks and so on, and also cybersecurity and privacy, a kind of very important topic. And sustainable and green ICT, yes, computer society is also moving towards how our computing systems and networking could be much more sustainable and green. And last but not least, yes, AI and network kind of and healthy and very successful integration. So once again, Computer Society is really proud of hosting sponsoring this conference. And the conference is actually under the program called TNC. I think it was already Andreas already mentioned yesterday. So TNC stands for technical and also conference activities. And so yes, we have TCCC or TCCC. That stands for Technical Community on Computer Communications. That is one of the very large technical communities under TNC of IEEE Computer Society, and then a lot of conferences, including this one, LCN. And so yes, so actually, so we are here. But Computer Society is not just about conference, but also we are providing you a lot of activities and services as your professional home, such as membership in geographic activities, stands for MGA at the left-hand side, but also education, that is handled by PEEP, Professional Education Activities Board, and also publications. Yes, often conferences are also tightly connected to publications, such as journals and magazines. So maybe many authors of papers this time would consider you extend your papers and to submit them to some one of our IEEE journals and magazines. Please submit your paper, extend the paper to IEEE journals and not some others. But anyway, you can do so. But IEEE transactions and magazines welcome your submission. But also not last but not least, but standards. Yes, this area, computer communication, standards are really important. And in addition to those, standing activities, but also Board of Governors leading some other directory initiatives strategically, such as, for example, our Vice President News, maybe somewhere. He's leading, for example, strategic cooperation with CRA and also ACM and some other our friendly neighbors. And so these activities and programs are contributing to our strategic goals, such as you can see on the top, engage more students and early career professionals. And I'm very happy to see that there are many students, also early career professionals today here, but also in the history of this LCN. And actually you, students, early career professionals, you are the source, you are the key of this community to envision more the growth of this community and also envision the future in next generation of computer networking and also some other areas. And also we shall engage more industry. And I'm also really happy to see that this time and also in the history of LCN, there are a lot of industry participation and involvement and also kind of successful collaboration among industry, academia, and also government and also some other stakeholders. And last but not least, yes, we shall lead the way in new technical areas. As Burkhard already mentioned that, for example, what's next beyond the current quantum computing and also generative AI, and so we as the largest and very vendor-neutral professional organization, we shall lead the way and together with you. Okay. So actually, the Computer Society is a professional home, not just about conference. Well, conference is primarily, of course, the activity, of course, but also some other activities. And so I believe that everyone here is already a IEEE Computer Society member, right? Okay. I hope so. I believe so. But if you are not yet, then it's time to join IEEE and IEEE Computer Society. So I will ask this question once again, maybe at the closing, and I will check that every single of you are already list of members, and I can have an access to that. So just kidding. All right. So as I mentioned, that IEEE Computer Society is a world's largest professional computing organization, and yes, once again, congratulations on 50th anniversary of LCN. And also, Computer Society is going to have a huge another milestone, that is 80th anniversary, okay? Next year, not this year, but next year, okay? And so we have more than 375,000 community members, wow, and of course, including computer communications, technical community, TCC, TCCC, but also not only TCCC, but also cloud computing, distributed processing, and so on and so on. So there are so many, related, technical communities. And so those are free to join, okay? So join us, and then you can join in many, technical communities. And those are the kind of, home to organize many conferences, like LCN, but also PACOM, and so on and so on, and also publications and other resources services such as transaction networking. Of course, that is our primary, of course, journal, but also some other journals, transactions, computer magazine, internet computing magazine, and standards, educational contents. And not only those periodicals, we also every year publish annual publications. That is Computer Society Technology Predictions. So you might not know this one. So I want to just briefly introduce you that is predictions every year, almost every year, led by the team of Dehan. Dehan is currently working at Hewlett-Packard HP, and he is also our past, president of IEEE Computer Society. So every year, we, Computer Society, envisions what's next, okay? And for example, in these years, 2 years ago, in relation to the computer networking, for example, trusted computing and also software for edge to cloud continuum. Okay, those are kind of very important measure, next, emerging, technologies predicted. And also last year, and also in addition to that, advances cybersecurity, non-terrestrial networks, and yes, this year, next generation cyber warfare, and yes, AI is coming. Of course, we see a lot of AI-related topics also today and this year. So, and also AI agents, and not only the technological aspect, but also we need to consider some other aspects such as economical aspect, ecological aspect, and also a socio-political aspect. All those are related to such technological aspects that is handled by IEEE Computer Society and also our larger community. So you may take a look at the Computer Society technology predictions, and then you can envision what's next together. So please join us and grow our community, and look forward to shaping the next 50 years, and let together grow this community to envision the future, such as AI agents, as I already mentioned, trusted computing, and so on and so on. And because Computer Society is always your professional home. So once again, congratulations, and let's join me to celebrate such a huge milestone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And of course, we have something for you, a little certificate of appreciation for joining us and for sharing this with us. And also have a little present for you. It's a little book with artwork, Aboriginal artwork, supporting the local artists. So that's also for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Good that you can throw it. All right, moving on. And as we celebrate 50 years of computer networking, we look back on a journey that was transformed or has transformed the world. and we are very fortunate to welcome someone who has been at the very heart of this transformation. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Geoff Huston. He's Chief Scientist at APNIC and member of the Internet Hall of Fame. He played a very central role in the initial deployment of the Internet here in Australia. And he served at the Internet Architecture Board, at the IETF working groups, and continues doing research on DNS and routing security, Internet measurements, and so on. So, yeah, the list goes on, and I keep it short, and please welcome Geoff. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Look, it's an absolute pleasure to be with you this morning, and certainly to look back over the last 50 years and also take a glimpse forward. And I must admit, the older I get, the more pessimistic I get about the future. Now, I'm not sure if that's just a human thing about aging, or it really is, this is a very, very grim place. But we'll explore this in exactly 30 minutes, or maybe a bit more, as we wander through sort of the last 50 and look forward. There are remarkably few truly fundamental innovations, and an awful lot of refinement that happens afterwards. The transistor was remarkable. To take what used to happen in a vacuum with heated anodes and electrodes and grids and so on, and to do the same function in a piece of germanium-doped silicon or something, as I recall, in 1947 at Bell Labs, was fundamental. That was one of those things that just rocked the world, right? And you go, well, is it all transistors? No, there was one more invention. 10 years later, 1959, I think, a bunch of folks said, I can do 2 transistors on the same silicon substrate. And that was the core of the entire computing revolution. All we've done since is make it smaller. We haven't changed a thing. It's planar. It's the same stuff, just refined. We're just tinkering with the edges. It's the same technology from 1957. So if I look at computing, what was the magic that absolutely transformed the world from the old telephone style and its predecessor telegraphy into computer networks? And I would actually say it was Ethernet. And the original sort of memo from Bob Metcalfe was actually a bit earlier. It was 1973. And it described a technique which was so revolutionary, it took the world by storm. There was no network. There really wasn't a network. It was just a piece of wire. And all the edges attached to this piece of wire. No silicon, no circuitry, no controllers, no timing, no nothing. It was a piece of wire. How minimal can you get? And the answer was, well, Ethernet. Because if you think about it, it was just absolutely stripping it down. Where's the clock? No, you don't understand. The packets self-clock. There's a preamble that allows all the receivers to sync at once. How do I tell whom I'm talking to? You don't. You talk to everyone. Go figure. You know, how do I sort of size packets? Well, there's 2 size bounds. There's small and there's large, and there's anything in between. You can't go larger than large. You can't go smaller than small. That was it. It's sort of totally the nothingness of networks. Oh, and by the way, it was open. It wasn't a secret. From that point on, it wasn't a secret. Now, all of the evolution since then was just tinkering with that fundamental model of going, how much of the network can we strip from a network and still make it work? And the answer is almost everything. So oddly enough, for the first 20 odd years, when we were doing point-to-point kilobit networking, 10 megabits was so big, there was no pressure to go faster. It's kind of, oh my God, try and saturate that. And you know, for 10 years we tried very hard and just couldn't get there. There was no demand to go faster. So the early standards were actually getting rid of that. I don't know, I used to do this a lot in my early days at the ANU, of doing that orange thick wire cable, trying to thread it around because it didn't bend easily, and then doing the vampire taps into it with a drill and putting these astonishingly expensive transceivers onto it and all that kind of crap. And it's kind of, networking must be easier. Right, let's go into thinner cable and let's actually use the existing telephone wiring and go twisted pair. Same speed, same 10 megs, but that was enough. And it wasn't really until, I don't know, 1995 that we did a fundamental change in Ethernet that actually reintroduced some models of silicon in the middle. Because once you tried to go faster, the idea of the common bus collision sensing stuff breaks down. The timings don't work. Aha, let's get rid of that. What do you mean? Let's get rid of the common bus and do a star network with a switch in the middle. And at that time, around the 90s, everyone was doing switches that switched the packet, and the edge attachments thought that they were still on a single piece of wire. They didn't know any different. And the switches around, Translans, Kalpanas, etc., are actually still with us today. But once you make it a point-to-point connection, you get rid of the physics of a common bus, signal propagation times, packet times, and all that kind of crap, and you can just up the clock. So let's up the clock by, oh, I don't know. It doesn't matter unless you really kick it in the head. How much faster do I need to go? Twice as fast? Nah. 5 times faster? Nah. 10 times. And so the first sort of refinement was 100 meg, fast ether. And compared to 10, fast ether is really quick. And another what? Few years down the track, 1988, 10 times faster. Oh my God. And another few years down the track, 10 gig. Which is where a lot of the stuff is at home now. You can put 10 gig through most twisted pair and it'll groan a bit, but it'll still work. Where are we looking now? Wow. 2015, 40 gig, and we're looking up into the terabits. Same ideas. If you look at this, it's a log scale to sort of make it less frightening, because otherwise it's just up and to the right. But that progressive refinement that happened between 95 and around 2010 or so was just an exponential growth in the clock, but the same model. The idea that there's this switch in the middle, and you just attach things at the edge, and it's just Ethernet packets, all guided by MAC addressing. Off we go. Is it still Ethernet? Is what you have in today's networks, and today's offices and so on, still Ethernet? Well, you could take that packet, move it back in time 40 years, and drop it on a big piece of yellow cable, and someone would still pick it up and go, yes, I understand the packet format, because it's the same packet format. The addresses, source and des, that MAC address registry, is still there as 48 bits, and it still works. It's the same. So that's the same. The packet size range, much to our, I don't know, frustration. It's still the same range from 64 to 1518. Hang on, I'm going 1 billion times faster. Yeah. Doesn't that mean that the packet rate has increased 1 billion times? Well, yeah. Doesn't that mean the silicon is running hard? Yes, but better silicon. So I can take that same packet and drop it back on a 10 meg wire, and it will still be the same packet. So in some ways, all we've done is refined the idea. We haven't done any fundamental changes since 1973. What didn't happen? Well, that common bus kind of got in the way, right? Has anyone ever worked with thick wire Ethernet and thin wire Ethernet and this and that? It's kind of, oh my God. We all do Wi-Fi. Why? Because I don't need to do wiring closet infrastructure. It's not a passive cable anymore. To make the speeds work, you've actually got to do switching in the middle. But it is just point to point, nothing special about that. You can't self-clock at a terabit. You just can't. So we changed it to run a constant carrier signal so that the sender and receiver sync with each other. Now, even that is a big statement. The old telephone networks ran at 8 kilohertz, and everyone had to run at the same 8 kilohertz. So in Australia, Telstra had an atomic clock in Melbourne. to give it a reference time signal, which was an astonishingly accurate 8 kilohertz. Now, Ethernet doesn't care whether that network over there and this network over here run at subtly different clocking times. That doesn't matter. It's clocked against its own reference point. It's self-clocking in that respect, but the packets don't self-clock. So you just do constant carrier signal. We tried so often, and it was one of the dismal failure points of the IEEE, that jumbograms never, ever, ever, ever got standardized. Most people use them and been using them for years. Is it 9,000 octets? Is it 8,000? Is it 8,720? Is it 9,250? It's 1,518. Anything bigger may or may not get through. Meh. And you can go to every network out there on the planet today and you get the same answer. Yeah, we do jumbograms, but it's all different. Oops. Never figured out quality of service in real time. Never, ever figured it out. Does it matter? At a terabit per second, what's quality of service? You know, if I overwhelm you with capacity, why do I need to give your packets better treatment than yours? When you're overwhelmed with capacity, everyone gets the same phenomenal amount of capacity compared to what they can do to the network. So in some ways, this whole thing about priority packets, real time and so on, that's absorbed a lot of time and attention over the years, was largely a waste of effort. The one thing that didn't scale was that poor old MAC address. Because thinking about it, if you have 30 billion or so devices, that's 30 billion separate MAC addresses, and it has no internal structure other than the manufacturer. So how do you know where to do or where to send a packet? You have a lookup table, 30 billion big? You're joking. So network protocols existed to bridge the gap between this phenomenally simple addressing scheme used by Ethernet and the demands of real-time networking. You see, the name of this conference, I think, is an anomaly, and it expresses a fundamental contradiction of around 50 years ago. And it was the tension between the incumbent telephone companies and the computer people. Because if you wanted to move packets somewhere other than your space, your campus, your whatever, you had to go and buy a long distance service because in most countries it was illegal to do it yourself. So the telephone companies were working on their own form of networking, their own form of packet switching, which had very, very little to do with Ethernet. It had a lot to do with a rich history of circuits, virtual circuits, and the antithesis of Ethernet. It stuffed the network full of crap and charged a lot for all that crap. And then you talked to the network, and the network said, never mind, I will look after this for you. Set up virtual states, a bit like using your own telephone, if you remember that. You know, locked it through and out spat packets at the other end. But Ethernet didn't do that. So at one point, we were sitting there going, well, if I want to talk to the computer down the corridor, I can use this application or that application. But if I want to talk to the same kind of computer somewhere else, oh, that's over X25. I need to go over to here to do that, to do this, to do that. It was never, ever going to work. That, quite frankly, that distinction between local and wide was an industry distinction. It wasn't a user or a computer distinction. It was just a distinction that mapped the current incumbents, but it was really just getting in the way. So what do? You put in an abstraction layer. First law of computer science, you know. Any problem that's difficult, you just put in another layer of abstraction and hope it all goes away. So we invented the Internet Protocol, IP. And it was the universal adaptation socket. That realistically, it was so simple, mind-bendingly simple, a bit like Ethernet itself. Every packet's an adventure. Don't go looking for acknowledgements. Don't go looking for reliability. It doesn't exist. Don't even go looking for predetermined packet sizes, because in the original model, IP could just fragment a packet when it was too big for the next hop. It was simply a datagram transport where every packet's an adventure. That's all. Now, that abstraction layer allowed you to write upper level protocols without worrying about whether it was Ethernet or long distance or this or that. And at the same time, you could put in frame relay, you could, God, even do ATM. Grenville Armitage was with you yesterday, yes. He was an ATM guy, died from top to bottom. We had huge arguments on the day. It died. There are still some residual bits out there, but they're museum pieces. The idea about IP was that it didn't matter. As long as the upper layers talked IP, the lower layers was somebody else's problem. And for the lower layers, my ATM network could talk to your frame relay network and use that to talk to your Ethernet, and nobody knew or cared because the IP adaptation kind of worked. It was phenomenally efficient. It was open. It was free. But it basically then created a scaling possibility. Because the one other thing that large-scale integrated circuit factory proved is that it's just processed sand. The more you make, the cheaper per chip. These days we pound out 10 billion chips a year, possibly more, really hard to tell. And the unit cost, if you get rid of the R&D cost, is still phenomenally small. So this is a scaling industry. Now, the advantage of Ethernet, the advantage of the internet, was that it didn't require you to scale the middle. You just had more edges. And the edges are actually doing all the hard work here. So when you had models that the telephone company loved, which was putting state inside networks, more state is more cost. More cost is a difficult network to scale. And that was true of X25, true of frame relay, true of MPLS, true of SRv6 or whatever fashionable piece of stuff is out there today. The circuit people haven't gone away, and they're still trying desperately hard to rip off a tax from consumers over networking facilities that are no longer necessary or needed. We had this war, the great protocol wars, back in, I'm going to take a stab and go 1990, where the telephone companies were pushing their form of open networking, which was based upon this model of network-centric views, that computers were dumb, poor things that didn't have a clue. And they just fed packets into the network, and the network said, leave everything else alone to me. Congestion control, quality of service, reliability, permanent, all that kind of good stuff. We're in charge. The computer people said, I'm sorry, a bit like Ethernet. We don't need you, we don't want you, and we don't want to pay for you. Every packet's an adventure in the internet, and I don't care. I will put all the intelligence about lost packets, reordered packets, corrupted packets in every single device that connects to the network. I don't need crap in the middle. I don't want to pay for crap in the middle. It can be as simple as you want, I don't care, because the edge is doing all the work. That whole argument, we thought, was settled by, mid-90s. Evidently we were wrong. We didn't quite put the stake through the heart hard enough or solidly enough. It's still around, but it's still the same argument. Because all of this really is about scaling. It's about how you can get a single network architecture that can scale a billionfold. How would you build a Sydney Harbour bridge that could take not just 1,000 cars a minute or whatever they do, but 1 billion cars a minute? Think about it for a second and think about the civil engineering challenge that represents. And go, oh my God, physics won't let you do it. We've done it in networking. Because by pushing complexity out, Christ, we can scale. Why have we been able to scale? Well, again comes this basic thing that the integrated circuit hasn't changed since 1957. It really hasn't. But the feature size keeps on getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. What's Apple's M3 chip? 2 nanometers or something incredible? I'm like, at some point we can't make it any smaller because the electrons have a life of their own and will just tunnel through whatever crap is there. But at the moment, we've got an amazing amount in simply taking one idea and refining it and refining it and refining it. It's still the same stuff, but it's just so, a trillion features on a single chip is just amazing. The result is bizarre. Telephones were expensive. Why? Because no one could pick up the phone, or all of you couldn't pick up the phone at the same time and dial somewhere else because we didn't have enough network. So all this thing about pricing, controls, etc., was all about rationing use. Your turn, your turn, your turn, your turn. I worked for a telephone company in the 90s, early 2000s. God, it was an experience. The telephone people, the international one, spent 5 months of the year planning for Mother's Day, and the next 5 months planning for Christmas. Because those were the only 2 days when the telephone network was under, particularly the international one, under astonishing pressure, and they didn't have enough network, right? So this whole thing about network centricity is a pain. If you move away from that and you switch into abundance, it's all at the edge. We don't have to do anything. We're not the rationers anymore, right? That means that what we've been able to do is change the mode of delivery. 70% of Australia's traffic in the early 90s was imported from America and places distant for the internet. These days, about 92, 93% of all the traffic delivered to people, to users, people at office, people at work, comes from your local data centre. In Sydney, it comes from there or there, down near the airport or across here in Darling Harbour or somewhere wherever the data centres are. You see, the big killer was distance. And it was distance that was the scarce thing. But if I have enough computing, enough storage, enough capability in silicon, I just put the same content everywhere. And that's what we've done. All of a sudden, we have got rid of the network. Literally got rid of it. Almost all the traffic you get is delivered from a data center to a tiny exchange point. It's just a massive switch, Ethernet style, down a line to you, to you, to you. There's no routing, there's no transit, none of that. And the network is not an address-based network anymore. I go to my website, it's on Cloudflare. Great bunch of folk, they do it for free. I love them. I'm here in Sydney and my phone has been given address A, and Cloudflare says your website is on address B. A talks to B, it looks like my website. I jump on a plane and go to Germany. Different address in my phone, obviously. Different address for my website because it's my copy that Cloudflare is also cached over in Germany. Same website. What binds those two transactions together to be me? The name. We are running a name-based network. So now the internet, the shared public space, is just a collection of last mile hops. The service network has nothing to do with addressing, nothing to do with routing, nothing to do with pushing a packet around the globe, because we don't. It's all to do with names and services and a delivery model that tries really hard to pre-provision. A lot of you use Gmail. A lot of you flew here to Australia. Google was watching. Oh God, your mail's somewhere else in the globe. By about the second time you access them, it goes, I know where you are now. And has preloaded the caches here with your data. You never saw it, you never needed to. It just happened, but now it's there just in case you want to see it. So today's network is not a network. At a service level, at a name level, it's coherent. At a packet pushing level, it's a whole bunch of local networks. A whole bunch. So what is a network in those worlds? Is this just a collection of LCNs? And I think it is. Now it's not a physical space, it's the service diameter of each data center. And quite frankly, those data centers are now the catch points for the rest of the network. What pushes the data centers together? I don't know. Neither do you. it's private. Akamai use Akamai proprietary technology they bought off Caltech. Google use, I don't know, they don't tell me, whatever Google use. Meta uses, again, I don't know, they don't share. It's not public networking anymore. So, where's it going? That's what we've done. And it's kind of, well, that's cool, that's got us to now. Where does tomorrow go? Well, we've killed the distance. We've changed just in time to just in case. Our provisioning is forward, our provisioning is at the edge. The edge devices are just televisions into that clouded world. The distinction between personal and public data networks is disappearing, right? So we started building networks. We started in a world of scarcity. We were trying to make more efficient use of a scarce resource. We turned into a world of silicon abundance, and we're doing something completely different, and we've ripped out most of the carriage network roles in the internet. And so if you think about that from a term of policy, Google's network is private. Is that the concern of the Australian government, the EU, the US government? Well, no, it's their money, it's their game, do what they want. Who regulates them? The FCC in US terms, or the Department of Commerce? And you increasingly see that the world of service is not a world of packets on the fly, it's a world of commerce. And so the regulatory agents are more traditional around the business of digital services. And so when we talk about cherished themes like universal service obligation, network neutrality, rights of access, market dominance, and I suspect you could also get into the cyber world and have exactly the same analysis, that when you translate that into CDNs, what are we talking about? And who are the regulatory bodies, and what's the conversation? Because you see, the world has changed. This is very recent. This is the top 10 companies by public capitalisation. There is a lot of AI madness in the world and a lot of money in the world. And the two are combined to buy NVIDIA shares. Okay, so it's a $4 trillion company. God knows why. But after that comes Microsoft, comes Apple, comes Google, Alphabet, comes Amazon, comes Meta. They're service companies with clouded service. They don't move packets. They're not AT&T or BT or Deutsche Telekom or anything like that. They're beyond that. And there are a couple of suppliers down there, the Taiwanese, TSMC, you know, the folk who actually build the chips. And what's missing from this list? AMSL, that tiny company in the Netherlands that is the only company on the planet that builds the machines to make the chips. Because for some reason the investment market hasn't decided they're also worth $1 trillion yet. But they will. So what does it really say? Well, this is where it gets fascinating, because content really is king in this world. They've pushed aside carriage and made it absolutely useless. It doesn't matter. Content is now consolidated into a tiny number of huge companies. They determine what you see. This is a quote from the head of Cloudflare about 10 years ago, and it's basically saying, you should be really scared about us, because if you can't get your content published by us, no one's going to see your content. Whatever internal rules we have are now public rules. You should get worried. At the same time, the Boston Globe was busy saying, these people define truth. Because you run up Google, you do a search term, and you believe the answer. True or not, they're defining it. Apply the same thing to AI today and get very, very, very worried. Because in some ways, competition has died completely. This is just a cartel. It's not novel, by the way. Around 140 years ago, the Gilded Age in America combined industrialization with railway transport and produced companies that are still with us today. US Steel, Standard Oil, AT&T, were all these massive megaliths that appeared in the 1890s. They took over the political system in the United States and completely corrupted it. Completely. It was a mess. Guess what? Same conditions, same small number of actors, same overwhelming dominance in today's world. Who lobbies the US Senate, the US Congress? Well, somewhere between Google and Amazon and Meta. That's where the money is, not the military complex. It's actually this digital world. And these now control the entire face of technology and the market. Complete control over all of that through the name of the internet. Is that what we were building? Well, we're just nothing more than a Facebook feeder network. We just didn't realise it. We weren't even building a new television network because we went and killed television and the newspapers and everything else. You know, we have destroyed a huge amount of the social fabric of, say, 50 years ago in the name of some new digital age that we have no idea what's going on. But we do know one thing. Those companies are not concerned about each other anymore. There is no competition. In the words from one of those amazing movies in 1974, geez, 51 years ago, Chinatown. Why are you doing this, Mr. Giddies? You can buy everything you want, you know. Anything you need, you can already own. Oh, he says, the future. The future, Mr. Giddies. And that's what they're actually playing about. This is not about competition. This is about like the US Steel 150 years ago of Alphabet trying to be a company in 150 years' time, and a meaningful company at that. This is all about assuming a role of prominence that now has enduring factors as well as, you know, contemporary factors. And they are far beyond today's social networks. So, is it because they're big that's a problem? Well, yeah, but. Is it because they exploit their workers? No, working for Google is one of the best gigs you can land. Free food, free everything, and so on. So it's not exploitative in that sense. Do they distort markets? Absolutely. Do they kill our kids? Absolutely. This whole thing about you've got to get up to age 16 to use social networks is actually all about the alarming rise in adolescent suicide all over the world. How do we get to this point where it is so corrupting, so noxious, that it's fatal to our kids? And is the best we can do some kind of you over 16 to use this? You kind of go, the correction doesn't match the enormous social harm that's going on here. So, what about open standards and open technology? Long gone. What happens inside Google is Google's secret. Same about Apple, same about Amazon. They expose as little as possible to any form of sharing and transparency. As Peter Thiel, one of the founders of PayPal, said, competition is for losers. Dominate or walk away. But dominance is absolute. And realistically, I think there's a real demise coming for open technology and open technology standards because nobody believes in sharing anymore. All of these systems are strongly proprietary. They're phenomenally pervasive, and it's really hard to compete with them. They're beyond the scale of individual governments, and no one's willing to take them on. From the Shire of Grong Grong through to the EU, the actions have been continuously ineffectual. They're just so difficult to deal with it because these closed technologies are now everywhere. And the residual efforts, predominantly from the academic and research areas, to try and go, you know, openness really is good. Openness actually allows folk to compete on equal terms. Openness is what we need, is increasingly a message that falls on ears that are completely closed and deaf. So I applaud what you're doing. In a Don Quixote model, I like the windmills you're tilting at. I love it. I just don't think it's going to work. Because where all this heads is ghastly. I don't actually know. It's very hard to paint this picture. But I'm pretty sure it's not good. That we've created a monster and then we're now feeding it with AI euphoria into places that we have no understanding where it's going. But we're fueled by a mania, the scale that makes the blockchain madness insignificant, that realistically, I don't think, has a good ending. And on that cheery note, I've used up all my time. Thank you very much.
All right, I'm not sure if there's an urgent question to Geoff. If so.
Right, you're all depressed.
All right, let's leave it on this cherry note, as you said. Then we also have something for you.
Oh.
So thank you very much for coming here.
Thank you.
And we also have this little book with Aboriginal art as well for you.
Very kind
so
of you.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
And yeah. Thank you. All right. And with that, we conclude this session. And of course, this is an anniversary, so there should be cake, I guess, a birthday cake. And now you will have a birthday cake outside and coffee as well. So yeah, let's celebrate. Thank you.
You like something that you can eat?
Florian, where's
I saw that you went for a run as well.
Sydney Harbour Bridge. Can't take a picture before. It's still going to be cut. So we try just test. We decided that it's your honor to do it with me. Okay, like a couple. Are you ready, guys? What do we do?
Cut it right through?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, here we go.
I think the chef
They will do
cut
that.
it. If you don't want to cut, the chef will do it.
The chef can do it.
Maybe we need a professional.
Mosaic.
Who had his hand on top?
No, we'll do that. Somebody around, you can do that?
Wait.
Lower the camera. Okay. 1, 2, 3.
There we go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jason, take more wax pieces. Take a piece. Come along. You select which one. I don't want the edge. Too much cream.